So gut bomb or a pit stop in the bathroom is definitely something you want to avoid during training and racing, but you just need to know what you're putting in your body and why you're doing it for these longer events. And in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly what to eat, when to eat it, and why you need to eat. And also stick around to the end because I'm going to go through some of the products that are available on the market right now and tell you why they have the ingredients in them and when you should use them for training and racing. So why we need to take nutrition. During your run, you're going to get to a certain point where we're going to deplete our stored glycogen. Our body runs mostly on glucose as we run and train, and especially when we race. But the kicker is we can only hold on to and store so much of it before we completely run out. And when you run out is when you get into that bonk, or when you just completely run out of gas, literally. So that is why you need to supplement with particularly a carbohydrate supplement. And with the scope of this video, we're going to talk about carbohydrates and how they are going to affect your body and which types of carbohydrates you can use and when you should use the different types of sugars. So really, when you want to start thinking about taking nutrition, I would say personally, it's at a point about 90 minutes of your run. Anywhere from the 60 to 90 minutes, you should be okay with the stored glycogen that you have if you are eating appropriately. If you're not, and you feel like you are burning out fairly often, then you need to potentially check how much food you're eating during the day, because you should have enough stored glycogen and enough energy in there to maintain about 60 to 90 minutes of just regular easy running. Once that easy running gets over 90 minutes is when you're going to want to start to think about taking nutrition in during your run. And as it gets longer and longer, you're going to want to take in more and more and make it more frequently. So that's really where you want to start when it comes to when you want to take nutrition. A caveat here is if you are doing longer interval events. So if you are doing a workout that is 30 plus minutes of intervals and the total duration might be over an hour at that point, then that's a good place to take in some sort of carbohydrate to make sure that you are getting the most out of that workout. You don't want to start to burn things down, because as your intensity goes up, the amount of glycogen that you will take from your stores will also rise as well. So if you are doing longer, faster intervals that are meant for a purpose for like race day, then you might want to supplement for those type of workouts that are on the longer end of the intervals. So those are the two areas where you want to start thinking about taking in nutrition. And so if you haven't had a bad experience, you probably know somebody who has had a bad experience with taking in different types of gels and goos and whatever products are on the market. And there could be a specific reason why, because there are different types of carbs, and these carbs and sugars, they're not created equal when you ingest them. So what you want to look for in your race day nutrition are the types of carbohydrates that you're taking in, and depending on what your event is and what the goal is, that is what you're going to want to use. So really there are two main types of sugars that we want to talk about, and a third that kind of splits in between the two of them. So it's glucose and fructose. And glucose is going to be the fastest one that absorbs and is going to be the easiest on your gut. But the thing with glucose is you can only take about in 60 grams of glucose per hour. So if you are getting into a longer event, you might want to then maximize those 60 grams of glucose. And then you want to also add in fructose to help bump that even higher. The transporters that take glucose to your system and fructose to your system are different. So you can actually maximize the amount of glucose that you're taking in and then start to supplement in with fructose to get you a much larger amount of energy into your system. So as I said, you can take in about 60 grams of an hour of glucose, but if you add fructose in with that glucose, you can almost take into 140 plus grams per hour, which is a lot of energy, it's a lot of food to take in. So in that case, you're already taking in 80 grams of fructose. So why not just take in fructose alone? Because that ceiling is much higher. So the thing with fructose is that it's lower on the GI scale, so it takes a longer time to get through your system, and it also takes a larger amount of water to help it empty through your gut. So you'll need to take in water with this, which is also just makes things a little bit more complicated, which is going to help. It's going to kind of throw that balance of your gut kind of out of whack, and you're just going to need to take in more water through and hope for that to empty through the gut. So glucose is just a little bit easier on the system, where fructose is just going to help for those longer events. It might be a little bit slower. So always go glucose first and then work in that fructose second. And then sucrose, which is typically table sugar, is going to be kind of a 50-50 split between the two of them. So sucrose breaks down, and half of it is going to be glucose, half of it is going to be fructose. You'll also see things like high fructose corn syrup, which is more of a manufactured sugar, which has pretty much the same properties as sucrose, where it's about a 50-50 split. You'll see these a lot of times outside of the actual products that are made for endurance athletes, but if you want to take in sodas or gummies, anything that's kind of like a candy is going to probably have high fructose corn syrup. But if you see that on the label, just know that it does act the same way that sucrose will act and will provide you with pretty similar energy. And so now that you have an idea of what the sugars are that are going to be in your products and what to look for when you are putting in your nutrition for training, you're going to have to know what these sugars look like on the product label, because although this is where it breaks down into your system, they are shown differently on each product, and that's where it can get kind of confusing. So when you look at a product label and you are looking for glucose, like say you want a glucose product to make sure if you're doing a shorter run or you just want to make sure you're maximizing that 60 grams per hour, then you want to look for glucose on the ingredient label, maltodextrin, and dextrose. So glucose is the most superior. It's probably the most expensive, so you don't see it that often. Maltodextrin is a blend of different starches that will absorb through your stomach a little bit easier without water. It takes a little bit of water to help it empty through the gut, but it's not as demanding. And dextrose is derived just from corn, and it's a bit cheaper, and it takes much more water to empty through your gut. So if you have a hard time, and if you have like a gut bomb issue, you want to make sure you're looking for that glucose or that maltodextrin. And dextrose, you're going to need to have to take in water throughout. So those are really the three types of glucose that will be presented on an ingredient label. So when you're looking at your product, look for those three if you're looking for a glucose product. Fructose is going to say fructose on the label as well, and also most of the real food that you're taking in, things like dried fruits, regular fruits, those are also going to be that fructose sugar that comes through. So if a main ingredient is a strawberry puree, that is going to be a fructose that you're going to be looking at. But most of the time, it's going to say fructose right there on the label. And then where things kind of get convoluted is when they're adding sucrose in, and there's a lot of different ways that these companies are using sucrose, which is that 50-50 split between glucose and fructose, and it's going to look all different. So sucrose really is cane sugar or regular sugar, a cane syrup. Honey is a form of sucrose. Syrup, maple syrup is a form of sucrose. You'll see things like tapioca syrup on there, and really any type of syrup or cane product that's going to be on the label is going to be known as sucrose. So if you're looking for just a glucose product and it has glucose and then it has some sort of honey or tapioca syrup, know that is a sucrose. That is going to be a sucrose supplement. It's going to have fructose in there as well. And it's important to note that on a nutrition label, they will be listed in order of prevalence for the product. So if dextrose is before maltodextrin, know that there is going to be more dextrose in there than maltodextrin. And it's a good way to kind of sift things out if they're using more filler, or if they're promising one thing, but on the label, it's kind of like hidden, like they're not necessarily lying, but they're just kind of veiling it under where it is. So it might be a little amount of a good product that they want, but they just want to make sure there's other fillers in there as well. So now that you have a good idea of what's in these products, I want to go through each of these different products. So I went through about a dozen of them to give you a good idea of what to look for and when you might want to use them. So I broke these down for best for overall distances that are going to cover your bases for shorter runs or longer runs. And then I did for best for longer events, and then better for shorter intervals or shorter events as well. So the best for overall distances are going to be Morton, GU, Cliff, and the Hammer Nutrition gels. And these are all gels first that we're going to be talking about. And mostly because these are going to have that glucose first. Morton in particular is just going to use glucose. GU, Cliff, and Hammer all have a maltodextrin combination as the primary ingredient. Then all of these have some sort of fructose supplement as well. So again, they're using that combination to make sure you can take in more without having that gut bomb or without reaching that glucose ceiling. So any of those products will really be helpful in terms of just covering your bases. And then it's really going to matter on how sensitive your gut is. So if you have a sensitive gut and you might not want to take in water, that's where Morton is going to be a bit more advantageous for you, because it is mostly glucose. and doesn't have any of those extra steps in the maltodextrin or dextrose that it's going to have to break down or take in with water. And GU, Cliff, Hammer Nutrition, you're probably going to want to supplement with a little bit of water. It's going to be a little bit thicker to take down. It's going to take a little bit longer for things to process through, but it will still give you the energy that you're looking for in terms of basically any distance that you want to run. And then for longer distances, that's where you can really rely on the supplements that are going to be sucrose heavy, or even real food for that matter. And that most of the real food is going to have some sort of fructose or sucrose combination. So if you do want to use real food, you're probably not going to want to use that for like a half marathon, or even a marathon for that matter, where your energy is really high. But if you are doing a longer run, or if you're out for an ultra, eating real food is fine. And these products are also going to be fructose and sucrose heavy, where Humagel and Spring Energy Gel are going to have real food in them, and there's going to be some sort of split between sucrose and glucose. Anytime you see the main ingredient as some sort of fruit, as in Huma, where it is going to be the fruit is going to be the main provider of energy, that means it's going to take a little bit longer to get through the system. It's going to be fructose forward, so you're going to want to also take that with water as well, just to make sure it is getting and passing through the gut properly. Then there's different products that have syrup and honey in them. Things like Untapped, which is a maple syrup, which is a split between glucose and fructose. And with Untapped, you're also getting a lot of added natural vitamins and minerals, and it's really good for those longer events. Taste awesome. And things like Honey Stinger, which is actually going to be sucrose forward. It's tapioca syrup is going to be the first ingredient in there, and then it supplements with honey, so it's going to be good for longer events. It has a nice 50-50 split between fructose and glucose, really. And then if you want to have something better for just the shorter events, there are a couple products out there that are going to be designed with just glucose forward, with just maltodextrin or just glucose. And those two are SIS, and then glucose. So these are very straightforward products that are going to help get through your system faster. But again, if you have a longer event where you're going to want to kind of maximize the amount of energy you can take in, you're only going to be able to take in about 60 grams of carbohydrates from these products alone, because they don't have any of the fructose there, so it doesn't have that balance. So if you just want to get it through your system, or you want a quick shot of energy, or if you first want to make sure you're maximizing your glucose, and then you want to supplement with something that is more fructose or sucrose on the back end, by all means do that. The SIS and the glucose are going to be the best bet for that. And then when it comes to the other side of the products that you can take in, there are these hydration mixes that you have, things like Scratch Labs and Tailwind. And these are always going to be better for the longer distance events. You're taking them a little bit more frequently. There is pretty much the addition of sucrose or fructose in all of the products that are going to be available on the market. And this is where you're going to see dextrose involved a little bit more, whereas in the gels, you're not going to see dextrose, the corn derivative form of glucose, because it takes more water to pass through your system when taking dextrose. So you're not going to see this in gels, because it's just going to sit there and you're going to need to take a lot of water with it. But if it's already in a hydration mix, that's where having dextrose is advantageous, because it does pass through your system quicker than a maltodextrin, but it just doesn't work standalone like in a gel. So it's better to have in some sort of liquid solution, and that's where these hydration mixes take advantage of the product of dextrose. So you'll see dextrose on pretty much all of these labels. Aside from Morton does have the same exact ingredients in their gel as they do in their liquid mix. Again, just straight glucose and some fructose on the back end. Scratch Labs is a sucrose and dextrose, and sucrose is the main ingredient, and then it has the dextrose as the glucose form in that as well. Sustain Elite and Sustain Elite X are going to have some sort of blend of both. Sustain Elite has a massive blend of carbohydrates where it's like a sucrose, fructose, and also some sort of maltodextrin. Pretty much sucrose heavy, but it's well-rounded to cover all your bases if you're taking for a longer event. Sustain Elite X has this maltodextrin derivative that is supposed to be a little bit better. It is very glucose forward, and it looks great, but it is also going to be a little bit pricey. And then Tailwind is going to be dextrose and sucrose pretty much straight up. So all of the nutrition mixes, the hydration mixes, are going to be for these longer events where you're taking them more frequently, where you're going to want to have a plan or it's also going to help with the hydration as well. So pretty much all of these hydration mixes should be for the longer events, or if you just want to make sure you're taking track of your nutrition and your hydration in one shot, say on a hot day in the summer, or if you want to account for some of the electrolytes that come with that as well, because pretty much all of these hydration mixes are going to have some sort of magnesium, some sort of calcium, some sort of sodium in there as well. So you don't have to take different tablets with them. So from here, where you should go, you should really start to kind of test things out and figure out what is going to work best for you. That is the general consensus when it comes to nutrition in general. But you are now armed with a lot of solid information that will help you figure out what product to use for the different purpose of your training and for your racing. So always test things out, making sure that they work, see what works for you logistically, see what you like, see what you can palate. But this information will help you kind of sift through all of the different available products, and maybe why you're having gut issues during these races could be from some of the above. So if you like this video, give us a thumbs up, grab the PDF version of this information so you can take that with you, take you to the store if you're looking at a nutrition product and you want to cross it against some of this information. Is ready, available for you. It's for free. Get it, drop your email in and get it shot directly to your inbox. Cool. We'll talk to you next time.